Stop trying so hard. What you desperately want is running from you, not because it's cruel, but because it's responding to your state. This is the backwards law. The more you chase, the more you affirm its absence. Neville Goddard said, "You attract what you believe you are. Not what you want, but what you embody." In this video, you'll learn how letting go is not giving up, but aligning. We'll uncover why surrender works, how your subconscious identity shapes your world, and how to live from the end, where your desire already exists. The more you chase something, the more it runs. That's not just poetic, it's energetic. This is the strange logic of the backwards law. The harder you try to succeed, the more you affirm that you're not there yet. The more you long for love, the louder you declare its absence. It's a law hidden in plain sight, quietly directing lives from behind the curtain. Alan Watts called it the law of reversed effort. Neville lived it. He said, "Do not condition your desire. Just dare to assume you are already what you want to be." What does that mean? It means you don't change your world by chasing an outcome. You change your world by entering the state of the wish fulfilled, by being the version of yourself who no longer needs to chase. This principle is not new. Lao Tzu spoke of it through Wu Wei, effortless action. Steve Jobs stumbled upon it when he said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward." Transformation begins not when we strive, but when we let go of striving. Have you noticed? The job appears after you stop obsessing over applications. The call comes when you stop waiting by the phone. The solution shows up after you release your grip on the problem. So here's the real question. Are you moving from belief, or are you reacting from lack? You see, the law isn't punishing you, it's reflecting you. And if you're living from a state of, "I don't have it yet," then even your most determined efforts are only digging that assumption deeper. So pause. Right now. What would change if you stopped chasing and started dwelling in the feeling that it's already yours? Because when you do, reality starts rearranging itself around that new center. Desperation repels, certainty attracts. Desperation isn't a flaw in your character, it's a signal, and it's one that the world responds to with precision. You may think your desire is clear and powerful, but if beneath it there's fear, urgency, or lack, that's the true message being received. You're not asking from wholeness, you're asking from emptiness. Neville said, "Change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live." In other words, the world mirrors your identity. Not your words, not your effort, not even your passion. When you feel desperate, you radiate separation. But when you assume your desire is already yours, you broadcast certainty. And certainty is magnetic. Consider Henry, a struggling artist. He used to beg galleries to take his work. Nothing. The moment he stopped chasing and began living as if his success were inevitable, opportunities found him. Collectors reached out. His art began to sell. Then there's James, a young entrepreneur who couldn't land investors. He revised his inner story, not by forcing confidence, but by imagining himself already celebrated, already trusted. Within weeks, he attracted a partner who believed in his vision. These aren't miracles, they're reflections. When you no longer beg reality to give you something, and instead walk in the identity of one who already has it, you become the source, not the seeker. So ask yourself honestly, are you still trying to get it? Or have you decided that it's already yours? That shift in identity is the real beginning of manifestation. Subconscious identity is the hidden saboteur. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are at the deepest, often invisible level. That level is your subconscious identity. Neville taught that the world is yourself pushed out. But what part of you? The part you don't see. The beliefs that were never chosen, only inherited, through childhood, school, media, and culture. You were taught who you are before you had a chance to decide. Beliefs about money, about love, about worth. They weren't yours, but now, they run silently in the background, shaping what you expect, what you accept, and what you reject, without even realizing it. Studies show that around 95% of our thoughts, behaviors, and decisions come from the subconscious. That means even when you consciously want success, your subconscious may still believe you're unworthy of it. This is why affirmations can feel hollow, why effort sometimes leads nowhere. It's not your desire that's weak, it's that your identity is contradicting it. Neville said, "To be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. But your thoughts cannot change unless you have new ideas, for you think from your ideas." So what ideas about yourself are you still thinking from? Are you the one who always has to prove? The one who just gets by? The one who isn't quite ready yet? Until you update that internal script, life has no choice but to reflect the old story. And that old story is not who you truly are. Rewrite your internal script. If your life is a reflection of your subconscious identity, then change begins not with action, but with assumption. Neville called it living in the end, embodying the state of already having, already being, already fulfilled. But most people live in the waiting room of life, postponing joy until something happens. They say, once I get the job, then I'll feel successful. Or, once I'm in love, then I'll feel worthy. That order is reversed. You must feel it first, internally, vividly, truthfully. Then, and only then, will it express itself in the outer world. To begin rewriting the script, start by identifying what you unconsciously believe. What are your assumptions about money, about love, about what you deserve? Then replace those assumptions, not with blind positivity, but with embodied certainty. Instead of I will be successful, shift to I am already the kind of person success flows to. Use scenes that imply the end. Imagine receiving the call, signing the paper, laughing in celebration. Feel the emotional reality of that scene. Neville said, the feeling of the wish fulfilled must be felt before the fulfillment. You can also revise your past. Take a memory that formed a limiting belief and rewrite it. See it ending differently. This softens the emotion tied to it and reshapes the self-concept it created. These aren't games of fantasy. They are acts of creation, conscious, intentional creation. Because when you persist in assuming something new, your world has no choice but to conform. So ask yourself, what would I feel, believe, and do if I were already that version of me? Live from that answer. That's how the script changes. Letting go doesn't mean becoming passive. It means gaining control over your inner state, especially when the outer world seems uncooperative. Neville emphasized non-reactivity. Appearances are not facts, he said, but reflections of old assumptions. If you react to them, you solidify them. If you remain still, you dissolve them. This is where Stoicism becomes a powerful ally. The Stoics taught emotional detachment, not coldness but clarity. They asked, will this matter in 5 years? And, is this within my control? Similarly, Neville encouraged detachment from outcomes, not because the desire doesn't matter but because you already have it. If you truly believed your wish was fulfilled, would you still panic over delay? Emotional mastery means remaining loyal to your vision, not your mood. A man loses a client. Instead of spiraling, he returns to the state of already being successful. Within days, a better opportunity appears. That's not coincidence, it's alignment. The world is not testing you, it's responding to you. And how you respond to life is a declaration of who you believe you are. So the next time chaos arises, ask, am I reacting as the version of me who doesn't have it, or responding as the one who already does? Your answer determines the future. If Neville's words have stirred something in you today, wait until you see what's waiting in the pinned comment. Let something unexpected find you. It's not a pitch, just a doorway. Flow, not force. There is a natural intelligence in life that carries you when you stop resisting it. The Taoists called this Wu Wei, the art of effortless action. It is not passivity. It is power without strain, direction without control, movement without friction. This idea seems to contradict everything we've been taught. You were told to grind, hustle, push harder, work longer. You were told that results only come when you're sweating for them. But look around. How many people are exhausted, burnt out, chasing goals that never arrive? How many are clinging to results only to find themselves further from peace? Now contrast that with someone in flow. Have you ever had a moment where everything just clicked? You weren't overthinking, you weren't forcing, you were simply present, and everything unfolded almost magically? That wasn't luck. That was alignment. Neville Goddard's version of flow was found in the phrase living in the end. He said, be still and know that you are. You are what you are aware of being. In other words, what you assume to be true, what you are being, determines the quality and direction of your life. And when you fully dwell in the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled, there's no longer anything to force. There's no need to chase what you've already received internally. Neville warned against striving. He said, you do not have to work to make it so. It is already so. Most people live in constant contradiction to this. They affirm abundance, but act from fear. They speak of love, but operate from loneliness. They try to make it happen, rather than flow from the knowing that it already has. Let's break this down. Force comes from fear. It comes from the belief that if I don't control this, I'll lose it. That belief immediately broadcasts to the world a state of lack. a subconscious message that says, I don't trust that life will support me. Flow, on the other hand, is born of faith. Not blind faith, but a deep inner conviction that what is mine will find me, and that I do not need to chase or cling to make it so. This is not about doing nothing. It's about doing the right things from the right state. A woman named Olivia had spent years trying to force her coaching business into success. Every week she changed strategies, adjusted pricing, rewrote her branding. She stayed up late trying to figure it all out, but her energy was frantic. Her actions were coming from the fear of not being enough. Eventually, exhausted, she stopped. She returned to the feeling of already being the woman with a thriving business. She imagined herself waking up calm, emails from clients pouring in, feeling aligned and valued. She allowed herself to dwell in that state, deeply, consistently, without checking the outer world for validation. Within a month, an old acquaintance reached out, asking if she could coach a small team. That team turned into a corporate contract. That contract led to referrals, not because she pushed, but because she allowed. When you are in flow, things come together not by your manipulation, but by your magnetism. Neville used the example of a man who wanted to go to Barbados. He didn't beg or try to save up endlessly. He simply imagined himself already there, feeling the warm breeze, seeing the island, living the scene. And then, unexpectedly, his brother sent him a ticket. No striving, just alignment. Here's what's important. Flow doesn't mean being passive. It means acting in harmony with your desired state. It means releasing the need to control every step and trusting that the intelligence behind all creation, call it God, the subconscious, the universe, knows the path better than you do. This is why Neville emphasized stillness. In stillness, you hear the subtle guidance. You're not reacting from panic, but responding from clarity. So how do you shift from force to flow? First, recognize where you're pushing. Is there a goal you've been chasing with tension? Are you clinging to results, refreshing the page, checking the messages, waiting for validation? If so, step back. Return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Imagine the end already realized. Not someday, but now. What would you feel if it were already done? How would you move, speak, breathe? Live from that. Then, allow action to arise naturally. Sometimes that means reaching out. Other times it means waiting. The difference isn't in the action, it's in the state from which it emerges. You can send an email from fear or from faith. You can build something from lack or from love. The external may look the same, but the results will not. Remember, your state is the seed. Your world is the harvest. Neville said, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and continue in that assumption until it is made manifest. That is flow. It's not about effortlessness. It's about effortless alignment. The river does not need to push. It moves by the path of least resistance, and still, it carves valleys and shapes mountains. What would your life look like if you stopped trying to force the doors open and started trusting that they were already unlocked? You do not need to prove your worth. You do not need to chase what is already yours in imagination. You only need to feel it real and let it unfold not through pressure but through presence. So ask yourself now, in this area of my life, am I forcing or flowing? Let that answer lead you back to stillness. Let it lead you back to yourself. Life is a game, not a test. Most people live as if life is a tightrope, narrow, unforgiving, with the constant fear of falling. Every decision feels like a final exam. Every setback, a personal failure. There is pressure to be perfect, to succeed quickly, to avoid making mistakes, to prove one's worth at every turn. But this approach suffocates the very thing that brings success, creative freedom. Neville Goddard didn't see life as a test. He saw it as a stage, a place where consciousness plays every role, writes every line, and directs every scene. He said, the drama of life is a psychological one in which all the conditions, circumstances, and events of your life are brought to pass by your assumptions. This is not the language of a harsh universe grading your every move. This is the language of a creative being, shaping experience through inner belief. So why do so many treat life as if it's a courtroom instead of a canvas? Because we've been trained that way. From an early age, we're taught to seek approval. Get the right answer. Don't mess up. Do it like everyone else. Get it right the first time. We internalize the idea that life rewards compliance, not creativity. That it honors performance, not presence. But look closer. The people who create extraordinary lives are rarely the ones who followed the rules without question. They're the ones who dared to see life differently, who saw it not as a path to be endured, but a field to be explored. Neville's teachings remind us that life responds not to effort or virtue alone, but to imagination and feeling, that what you experience is not the result of a cosmic test you're trying to pass, but a mirror of what you've accepted as true within yourself. So if your world feels small, harsh, or full of struggle, that's not a failure. It's a reflection of the script you've been unconsciously repeating. But here's the freedom. You can rewrite the script. When you begin to see life as a game, something changes. You stop clinging so tightly. You experiment more. You risk more. You allow yourself to fail, not because you enjoy failure, but because you know it's not final. It's just part of the plot. Imagine watching a movie where nothing goes wrong. No tension, no challenges, no unexpected turns. Would you watch it? Would you remember it? Every great story needs contrast, and your life is no different. Neville said, "Change your conception of yourself and you will automatically change the world in which you live." That change begins when you stop treating every moment as a pass-fail scenario and start approaching it like a scene in a play you are free to direct. Even the so-called mistakes become useful. They reveal what's still assumed within. If something unwanted appears, it's not punishment, it's feedback. It's the subconscious saying, "This is what you still believe to be true." Now you have a choice, not to react with fear or blame, but to revise the script, to go within and assume something new, to enter a different state. And that's where the power lies. Not in control, but in assumption. Not in being right, but in being imaginative. Think of a child playing. They can switch from pirate to astronaut in a heartbeat. They create worlds with cardboard boxes and paper crowns. They aren't waiting for conditions to be perfect. They decide it's real and live from that decision. Neville called this living in imagination. The inner world becomes more real than the outer. You live from the end, not because you're escaping reality, but because you understand it's being shaped by your internal state. There's a story of an actor who was struggling to land meaningful roles. Every audition felt like a test. He'd go intense, rehearsed, desperate to be chosen. But nothing landed. Then something shifted. He stopped trying to pass. He began to see himself not as someone trying to break in, but as someone already living his dream. He rehearsed not for approval, but for joy. He imagined the phone calls, the celebrations, the sense of fulfillment, not someday but now. Soon after, opportunities came, not because he changed his tactics, but because he changed his identity. That's the game. It's all inner. The world plays along with whatever role you assume. So what if you assumed this whole experience wasn't a trial, but a playground? What if your delays weren't rejections, but redirections? What if your so-called failures were nothing more than miscast scenes in a larger performance, one you have full permission to rewrite? There is no final judgment waiting for you at the end of your journey, only the unfolding of what you dared to assume and persist in. Life is not asking you to get it right. It's inviting you to get creative. When you see life as a game, not a test, you stop shrinking in fear and start expanding in possibility. You begin to ask new questions. What if I tried this? What if I played with that idea? What if I dropped the rules and trusted the feeling instead? And in that space, something beautiful opens. Freedom, spontaneity, confidence without effort. So the next time you catch yourself trying to prove something, stop. You're not being graded. You're being reflected. And the reflection always changes when the player does. Now the real question becomes, what role are you ready to play next? There is a way of living, a way of moving through the world, that does not demand exhaustion, does not rely on willpower alone, and does not sacrifice your inner peace in pursuit of outer results. It's not about giving up. It's about giving in, to alignment, to flow, to what Neville Goddard called the state of the wish fulfilled. This is the path of least resistance. It's often misunderstood. People hear it and think it means doing nothing or taking shortcuts or avoiding difficulty. But this path is not about escaping challenge. It's about no longer being in conflict with yourself. Let's begin with a simple truth. Life responds to your dominant state of consciousness. If you believe success must be earned through constant struggle, then that will be your experience. You'll attract obstacles, delays, and endless striving, not because life is cruel, but because you've assumed that this is the only way success can happen. Neville said, "You do not have to work to make it so. It is already so." He wasn't encouraging inaction. He was pointing to a deeper understanding of causality. The outer world is not moved by effort. It is moved by identity. What you are being inwardly determines what shows up outwardly. When you're living in resistance, you may still be taking action, but the energy behind that action is fear, force, or control. You try to bend circumstances to your will. You chase outcomes instead of becoming the version of yourself who naturally attracts them. And here's the paradox. The more you chase, the more you affirm that you don't already have. The more you force, the more you separate yourself from the ease of receiving. This is why the path of least resistance matters. It's not about avoiding action. It's about allowing action to emerge from a place of clarity, faith, and inner alignment. It's about doing what feels in harmony with your desired reality, not what feels heavy, anxious, or desperate. Imagine two people trying to reach the same goal. One person believes they must struggle, outwork everyone, and sacrifice their peace for success. They micromanage every detail, doubt every step, and burn themselves out trying to control outcomes. This is the path of most resistance. The other person holds the end in mind. They've assumed the wish fulfilled. They trust that the right opportunities will unfold at the right time. They still take action, but only when inspired, only when it feels aligned with the version of themselves who already has what they want. They're not passive. They're precise. Their energy is clean. Their actions are clear. And they move through life not as a beggar hoping to be chosen, but as a creator embodying the choice they've already made in consciousness. Neville often spoke of the bridge of incidents, the natural unfolding of events that leads you from your current reality to the one you've imagined. But to cross that bridge, you must walk in faith. You must stop trying to build the bridge yourself, and instead trust that the moment you shift your state, the path begins to appear. So how do you walk this path? First, notice where you're struggling. Where in your life are you trying to make it happen through sheer effort? Where are you working against yourself, ignoring your intuition, or forcing a plan that no longer feels alive? Most people override their inner guidance out of fear. They continue down paths that drain them, pursue relationships that no longer fit, or cling to strategies that feel misaligned, all because they're afraid to trust that something better will appear. But life doesn't reward sacrifice. It reflects belief. If you believe ease is dangerous, you'll resist the very flow that wants to carry you. If you believe that surrender equals weakness, you'll cling to control even when it hurts. And if you believe that you must always do more to receive more, you'll exhaust yourself chasing what could have arrived effortlessly, had you only allowed it. The path of least resistance invites you to listen more than you push. It asks you to pay attention to the subtle shifts in energy, to the inner nudges that say, "This is right," or "This no longer fits." It teaches you to trust the deeper rhythm of your life, the one you don't need to orchestrate, only respond to. There's a story of a woman named Clara who spent years trying to force her career into a particular shape. She had the credentials, the plans, and the discipline, but nothing worked. She jumped from job to job, each one leaving her more unfulfilled than the last. Eventually, exhausted and confused, she stopped trying to force it. She turned inward. She asked, "What would I be doing if I already felt free, successful, and fulfilled?" The answer surprised her. It wasn't a title or a company or a plan. It was a feeling, a deep sense of contribution and creativity. So she followed that feeling. She started writing again, something she hadn't done in years. She began sharing ideas online, not to be seen, but because it felt true. Within months, her writing was reaching thousands. A publisher reached out. A new career unfolded, not because she forced it, but because she followed the path that felt most like herself. That's the power of alignment. Neville's teachings make it clear. You must assume the end, and then let the means unfold. The how is not your job. Your job is to dwell in the state of already having, already being, already fulfilled. From that state, action is no longer resistance. It's flow. You'll still move. You'll still create. But the energy will be different. You'll stop asking, "What do I need to do to get this?" and start living as the one who already has it. That subtle shift changes everything. So ask yourself, what would my life look like if I trusted more than I controlled? What decisions would I stop forcing? What opportunities would I allow in? What paths would I explore? Not because they're guaranteed, but because they feel alive. The path of least resistance is the one that aligns with your assumed identity. It may not be the most familiar. It may not be the one others expect you to take, but it will feel like truth. And when you follow it, you'll find that life begins to cooperate with your vision, not because you fought for it, but because you became it. And in the stillness that follows, you'll realize there was never anything to chase. There was only something to remember. who you are, what you already possess within, and the ease with which it flows when you finally stop standing in your own way. You've arrived at the final and most important part of this journey, the part where knowledge becomes experience, where theory is set aside in favor of transformation, and where your identity no longer drifts in the direction of circumstance, but anchors itself in the assumption of fulfillment. Neville Goddard made this clear. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and continue in that assumption until it is made manifest. This is not a temporary act of imagination. It's a sustained shift in self. And now the challenge is this. For 7 days, live from the end. Not as a metaphor, not as a spiritual exercise you try once before sleep, but as your new way of being, as the identity you refuse to betray, regardless of what the outer world seems to say. This challenge is not about visualizing harder. It's about shifting how you see yourself. It's not about forcing change. It's about becoming the cause of change. Here's how it works. For the next 7 days, select one desire, something real, something specific, something that matters to you. Then, define clearly who you would be if that desire were already fulfilled. What would that version of you feel throughout the day? How would they speak, walk, and think? How would they respond to problems? Not from hope, but from certainty. This is not about pretending, it's about embodiment, because identity is not held in words, but in state. And when the state is changed, the world inevitably reconfigures itself to reflect it. Let's say your desire is financial freedom. For 7 days, you don't just affirm wealth, you move through your day as the person who already knows resources flow to them. You choose your words carefully. You don't complain about money, you don't rehearse lack. You hold the posture, the mindset, and the inner peace of someone whose needs are already met. If your desire is love, you don't spend the week hoping for someone to arrive. You walk through your life as someone already loved. You wake up with that warmth. You move with that inner security. You don't scan the world for proof. You bring the proof with you, in your state. If your desire is purpose or healing or a new opportunity, you assume it's already done, and you begin to see the world through that assumption. And what happens when doubt arises? Because it will. The world you've already created will try to tempt you back into the old self. The phone won't ring, the numbers won't change, people won't respond the way you want them to. And in those moments, you'll be tempted to drop the state. But Neville called us to remain faithful. He said, faith is loyalty to the unseen reality. And that is the true test, not how deeply you can visualize, but how calmly you can remain in your desired identity, even when the world hasn't yet caught up. This is not passive. It's the most courageous thing you can do, because for 7 days you will stop reacting, you will stop chasing, you will stop affirming what you don't want, and instead, you will live as the person who already is. 7 days, not to earn your desire, but to return to the version of yourself who never needed to, the version who simply assumed and allowed. Check the pinned comment, open to a page, and let Neville speak directly to the state you're ready to step into.